Hello, my name is Bryan Cassill, and I'm the Commercial and Formulations Manager for Mars Horsecare BUCKEYE Nutrition. We talk a lot about how to feeding overweight horses and how to develop a plan for them and how to get them to the endpoint that we want, but we don't talk a lot about the practical piece of how you're going to do it every day in your barn. Right? So you go into your barn, you have a horse that has a body condition score higher than what you want it to be, whether it be a 7 or 8 and you're trying to work it back down, or it has a metabolic condition that you're trying to get some weight off of it, right? And it's feed time, and the barn's loud, and everybody's feeding, and there's your horse. Everybody else is getting fed, and there's your horse. What are you going to do to try to create some type of acceptance of the fact that this horse isn't going to get fed like everything else in the barn? Right? So the best thing that you can do is still feed that horse. Right? So you can still feed your horse. You don't have to try to starve it down. And the best way to do that is through a balancer, through something that you're going to feed about a pound of a day, and then split that pound up into multiple feedings. So if your barn is feeding twice a day, you can split that pound up into a half a pound morning and night. That way when everybody else is tearing the barn down because it's feed time, your horse can still get fed as well, right? Which is a lot better than them just standing in the stall watching everybody else eat. So if you wanted to stretch that balancer out to create more volume, right, which would create more activity, right? We're talking about more activity for your horse during that time, so they're not just throwing back half a pound of food and then watching all their neighbors eat. A nice thing would be mixing that with a fiber source, right? Whether that could be a chopped hay, could be a beet pulp source that would be big and voluminous that you could have already soaked to that would slow them down. Could be a low starch, low sugar alfalfa cube, or a low starch, low sugar Timothy cube, or a mixture of that, or an alfalfa pellet, right? And there's benefits to that. Adding protein to the diet will also help with those gastric ulcer issues and then drive some calcium up in the diet too. So there's benefits of doing that, and creating that longer meal will decrease that stress on your horse of watching every neighbor around it go ahead and eat. So management-wise, you can add rocks to your bucket. You can put a small bucket inside a big trough. Right, you can do a lot of different things to create that horse, so you're creating activity for them to look around, and you're basically creating a grazing behavior in your stall, right? So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create activity for them and spread that time out so they're not just throwing back food. Also, when we come through the barn and everybody else is getting treats, or you worked your horse and you're happy with him and you want to give treats as well, the piece to remember about that is just lower the amount, like everything in moderation, right? So we've done some research and we've looked at some insulin responses on sugar, and when you look at that, it's about a 50 gram per meal kind of threshold for an 1,100 pound animal, which equates to about 5 peppermints. So if you're thinking about trying to decrease that insulin response, if you have a big overweight animal and you're trying to get that down, I'd hold under 5 peppermints. All right, so everything in moderation per meal. Right, so a couple will do. It's still okay to treat your horse. That's fine. It gives the horse a lot of joy. It gives us a lot of joy as horse owners. But pull that number down where it's in moderation, that you're not going to create a response that you don't want.